What is going on, my friends, and welcome back to another video on the channel. Well, in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Solana as we are at a very interesting balance right now. I think we're getting to some type of inflection point where I think we are going to see a move relatively soon. And so with that being said, of course, I wanted to give you all what I'm looking out for, how I'm expecting this thing to go, and more. So of course, with that being said, let's skip the BS, let's skip the fluff, let's get straight to the good stuff. So what we're looking at for Solana right now is a few key things, okay? So of course we've been in something of a descending wedge for realistically about 2 months now. It's not really done much. Just been a bit of a gradual, really boring move, right? Just constantly working its way down. Now, we talked about this, okay? We talked about this as we were clearing 230, 240, 250. We're setting some of these highs, and we knew that with the amount of extensions off of many of our EMAs, with the amount of extension we were seeing off of our Bollinger Bands, we kind of had a feeling at some point this thing will need to slow down. Now, what's amazing about what we're seeing, though, is the fact that as we have slowed down, realistically, volume has stayed pretty high. I mean, it stayed relatively high, especially in comparison to what we saw earlier in the summer. You know, even towards the summer, look at the difference in volume here. I mean, that's absolutely insane. And so what that means for us is that although we are in a bit of a cool down, we are still seeing a relatively solid amount of volume. And that does show that this is definitely a more long-term sustainable movement that we saw. You know, this big growth is something that we can expect to be able to be maintained. And that Solana did find its spot in the crypto market. It is deservedly up in the top 10. You know, there are arguments, there are people who say that it's not really it's not really decentralized, and that's definitely a justifiable point. But really, in the term of things, they provide some great services and solutions to crypto, and I think it's justified. So going forward, what we can expect over the long term, in my opinion, is still growth. But getting to that point, there definitely could be a few little obstacles and a few little barriers. So the big goal right now, obviously, the main thing that we're focusing on is the clearing of two key levels of resistance. Until we see these two levels of resistance get cleared, I wouldn't even remotely consider buying any more Solana right now. The reason being is because these will be the two strong confirmations that we need to say that we are now in an uptrend. And personally speaking, I like buying on confirmations. I like buying whenever I can be confident in that buy to say that the likelihood is we're working our way back to the top side. Because who realistically wants to be buying in a downtrend? You know what I mean? And so what that means for us is that looking at the Solana charts right now, the two key confirmations that we're going to have are going to be the top side of this wedge. Now, considering the fact that we now have these 3 points, we can now create a trend. It takes 3 points to make a trend, usually. And so what that means for us is that the moment in which we do finally, eventually, see this get cleared, we are going to start to say that step really number one on a more macro scale of us being able to work our way back towards $250, $280 or so. Now, realistically, when we see this happen, who knows? But will it happen? I think it's very possible. Typically speaking, when we see descending wedges, they are going to usually, let's just say usually, not always, but usually have a bullish resolution. What that means is that they will eventually break to the top side. And so that is something we will keep an eye on, and we're going to deem that as step number one for us to even consider to be buying. Now, if that is going to start to happen soon, if we do start to make that move to the top side, I'm actually also going to keep an eye on $197. Now, the reason that I picked out $197 specifically is going to be the formation in which we're seeing in terms of patterns. Now, I like to look at patterns, I like to look at indicators, I like to look at moving averages, and I think these all do hold their own weight. And what I'm noticing from this pattern specifically is that we do have this good old little cup and handle pattern playing out right now. Now, you can see that after we saw this recovery back up to $197, we put in a double top from what we saw back here, and then we retraced back into our key 618 to 786 Fibonacci zone. Of course, all you would do is just draw Fibonacci from your low that we put in on December 13th all the way up to your most recent high, your little macro high up here towards December 27th, and you can see it gives us a 618 to 786 between $169 and $160. Well, we came back down to this key level of support, and that's also going to be justified by VPVR. You can see this key level of support peak right here, and you can see that we're holding it relatively well. And so what this means for us is that over the next few days, we need to keep an eye on if we're going to start to make this move. Because if we do, and we continue upwards, we don't go in to put in a lower low here, and we continue upwards, we also need to know that that is going to be a crucial level, $197 in terms of resistance, and that even if we just gradually work our way above this trend line here, this downward sloping trend line, we also need to break $197 before getting too excited, because the resistance there is going to be extremely heavy. Now, in the instance in which we do see a breakout of that nature, I mean, we could definitely be looking at a move of, back up towards, let's get this pulled up, back up towards $253 with a breakout target above our most recent macro high. So that is definitely something to keep an eye on. But until we see the clearing realistically of both of these levels, I for sure wouldn't be looking to do much buying, personally speaking. Now, I know there are little short-term moves that may happen in between then and there, from 10% we might miss out on, but I'm willing to miss out on a potential 10% to save myself from seeing a loss of 20+% if we do see that correction to the downside there. Now, before we are able to even make that move, there is a level of resistance that's holding us back right now, and it's actually going to be our 20-day simple moving average on the daily charts again, as we did say. And so what we need to be aware of is that if we're unable in the very immediate short term to get above $180 on a daily close, the likelihood is we're going to get rejected off of this 20-day simple moving average, especially considering the fact that we're already below it, which usually leads to a fall back to the bottom side of our Bollinger Band envelope, which is currently looking around $160 to $162. So what you need to be paying attention to is that I would say if by the end of Monday that we have not been able to clear $180, likelihood is we will push back down a little bit lower towards this $160 to $165 range. Of course, that's just speculation in terms of time, but I do believe that a rejection would happen there. That may push us back to the bottom side of this Bollinger Band envelope and possibly even as low as $160. So definitely do pay very close attention to that. We want to get above that pretty soon, okay? Because in an instance in which this bullish scenario doesn't play out and we do start to pull back to the downside, well, we're aware that likelihood is we're going to retest the 160, which is a very strong level of support. But if that was to fail, well, things could get relatively ugly. As you can see, that's VPVR, one of the biggest VPVR peaks in the history of Solana. And so if we come back down to lose this $160 level, yeah, we're likely looking at 140, maybe even as low as $130. So it is pretty important that we do make this move up to 180 and we look to start retesting these key levels of resistance relatively soon, because in an event in which we don't, things may get a little bit ugly and we actually may lose the key 20 simple moving average on the weekly charts. If we go out here, you can see that we're at it now. And so if we're unable to hold this level, especially on the weekly close, well, things again may get relatively ugly. So keep a very close eye on this, keep a very close eye on these levels, and remember, we're keeping an eye on 2 levels of resistance before personally I'm looking to do any buying. Our downward sloping level of resistance and the cup line for this possible cup and handle pattern. This cup and handle pattern will not be invalidated until we come back down below $148, but realistically, I would like to see that at least $160 holds up, and if it doesn't, well, at that point, I would start to consider it very likely that it just won't play out how we would expect it to in an event like it is now. So with that being said, of course, I will keep you guys as up to date as possible. Until that happens, I'm just going to sit back, I'm going to watch, I'm going to let this thing play out. Sometimes the best thing you can do is crypto is just to simply let these things play out. If you rush yourself in, if you rush these buys, if you get impatient, you could be buying while we're still in a downtrend, and doing that is just only going to cause some emotional and financial stress, which I'm not really looking for. So with that being said, that's going to be the quick update of the day for Solana. Of course, I hope you guys do enjoy the video, and I hope you guys did enjoy having me behind the camera. For 2022, my goal is to be behind the camera for just about every video, so I hope you guys do enjoy that. If you do, you can of course let me know by smashing that like button and subscribing to the channel if you are new, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.